Before oil defined the 20th century, a sweeter liquid shaped the 17th molasses. In the age of maritime empires, where winds and ocean currents determined the fate of nations, molasses was the lifeblood of a vast economic machine, the triangular trade. From sugarcane fields in the Caribbean, barrels of molasses were shipped to New England, where they were distilled into rum. Those bottles of rum then crossed the Atlantic to the West African coast, exchanged for enslaved people who were transported back to the Caribbean to cultivate more sugarcane. A self-sustaining loop, brutal and efficient like a thermodynamic engine. Molasses was not food. It was political fuel, a liquid that financed empires, ignited wars, and defined wealth through human suffering. Even when Americans dumped tea into Boston Harbor to protest British taxes, they often forgot that an earlier rebellion had begun over something else, a thick black syrup, and the blood coins it carried. When humans first refined sugarcane,
wow, I've never seen
they cared
anything like
only
it.
about the sparkling white crystals. Molasses, the dense, dark residue left after crystallization, was treated as waste, often dumped into the sea or fed to livestock. But an accidental discovery changed everything. Yeast loved molasses. In a mineral-rich, sugar-dense environment, yeast thrives, converting remaining sugars into ethanol through fermentation. C6H12, O6, 2C2H, 5OH, plus 2 CO2. From waste, molasses became the ideal raw material for rum, a product easy to preserve, easy to transport, and in many colonial ports more valuable than silver itself. Rum quickly moved beyond cuisine. It became a currency of the Atlantic world used to purchase enslaved people, exchange goods, and pay sailors' wages. In the 18th century, people said, "No rum, no Navi." From that dark stream of residue, humanity distilled a new financial system where the biological energy of sugarcane transformed into the social energy of power. If there is a symbol of early capitalism, it is the trade triangle Caribbean, New England, West Africa.
If we
the
pivot
Caribbean
here, the growth
exported
metrics improve
molasses.
significantly. That
New
aligns
England
perfectly
turned
with
it
the
into
Q3
rum.
targets.
I've cross-referenced
Rum
the
was
data on the
traded for
laptop. The trend
enslaved
holds
people,
up.
and those enslaved people were transported back to the Caribbean to grow more sugarcane, producing more molasses. This system functioned as a perfect positive feedback loop. Profit amplified itself like a chemical reaction without a stopping point. More enslaved labor meant more sugarcane. More sugarcane meant more molasses. More molasses meant more rum, and thus more enslaved people. Wooden ships named Hope, Providence, or Liberty sailed from New England ports. Yet their cargo was anything but free. Every barrel of rum was exchanged for human lives. Historians estimate that in the 18th century alone, more than 12 million Africans were drawn into this system. Molasses, once thought a mere byproduct, became the fuel of global slavery. It was no longer trade, but a social chain reaction in which human beings were burned as fuel to sustain an economic engine. In 1733, recognizing the immense profits generated by the Triangle, the British Empire enacted the Molasses Act. The law imposed heavy taxes on any gallon of molasses not sourced from British colonies, forcing American merchants to buy imperial molasses at inflated prices. But New Englanders responded in a way typical of the era smuggling. They secretly imported cheaper molasses from French and Dutch territories, distilled illegal rum, and used it to finance local economies. Within those hidden cellars and clandestine distilleries, the first spirit of American rebellion began to ferment. Many historians view the Molasses Act as the first tax revolution, a precursor to the Boston Tea Party 40 years later. The irony is striking. Before Americans threw tea into the sea, they had already risen over molasses. From a systems perspective, this marked the first time colonies openly resisted imperial logic, a logic that turned waste into gold. But only for those in power. Molasses, an ordinary liquid, began to fracture the foundations of global authority. By the 19th century, the sugarcane machine began to falter. The Industrial Revolution introduced sugar beet, a crop that could be grown in Europe without enslaved labor. At the same time, Abolitionist movements spread across the Atlantic. When slavery was dismantled, the triangle lost one of its essential sides. The collapse resembled a chemical reaction cooling after losing its catalyst. Rum production declined sharply. Molasses prices crashed, and barrels of once precious black gold were reduced to livestock feed. With the rise of industrial white sugar, pure and inexpensive molasses disappeared from dining tables, surviving mostly in warehouses and ethanol factories. From the center of global power, it returned to its original status, an anonymous industrial byproduct. Yet its legacy endures in glasses of rum, in sugarcane fields, and in the forgotten memories of millions who traded freedom for sweetness. Human history is not written only in ink, but in the liquids that have passed through our hands. For the 17th century, the energy that shaped the world was not oil, but molasses, a humble residue that built empires and ultimately helped bring them down. Today, as data and electricity become the new molasses of the digital age, one question remains: are we refining the future, or simply repeating another cycle that is both sweet and ruthless?